Hello and welcome to the Chris and Bud Show. My name is Chris Scarborough, and with me is my co-host, my friend, and my brother in pod, Mr. Bud Bohannon. Together we'll be taking you on a nostalgic ride discussing a wide array of topics from our childhood through today, hoping to share a bunch of laughs along the way.
Yeah. You know what time it is. It's time.
No, not yet.
Can I go now?
Yeah, now.
It's time for the Chris and Bud Show.
Welcome back. Today we will be talking about the Xbox 360. It being the console in this particular generation that we played the most. This is Generation 7. It also included the Nintendo Wii and the PlayStation 3. We did not play those other two consoles all that much. Bud's got a small anecdotal story about PlayStation 3, but the majority of this particular podcast will be mostly just the Xbox 360. We'll start with the PlayStation 3 so Bud can get his story out of the way, and then we will move on to the Xbox 360, which will be the bulk of this podcast. The PlayStation 3, I'll just give a little intro real quick, and then you can go ahead. The PlayStation 3 was released November 17th, 2006, so it was about a year after the 360. The original cost was $499. Adjusted for inflation was about $639. There was also another bigger hard drive console that was about $599, and if you adjust for inflation, it'd be over $700. So it was not a cheap console when it first released.
You know what's wild to think about is how you said it was over $700 now. I mean, let's think about this. Yeah. That was only, 13 years ago?
Yeah. 12.
It's crazy to think about because I kind of remember those times almost very vividly. But
yeah, I think about it. Yeah, you don't really think about the cost, I guess. This is around the time where we are adults now. We're able to buy our own stuff. So maybe it's just we still weren't living on our quote unquote own. So maybe that made some difference.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy to think about how that would be $200 more than a 13-year time span. What kind of a percentage increase is that? 400?
Well, I think for inflation, it's huge. It's almost double. Yeah, so the inflation has been huge for just overall in the country, even in such a short time span.
I know my increase in pay hasn't matched it, so someone needs to get on the ball.
That's definitely been one of the issues they've complained about. Is inflation has been so high. And the cost of living has risen and the pay has not matched. But I mean, unfortunately, it kind of is what it is. There's nothing me and you can do about it. But let's get back on topic here. If there's anything that you want to talk about, or at least tell our story or tell your story about the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, so for me, I originally bought the PlayStation 3 because it was a better console than the 360, at least in my eyes. It had better technical specs. I think it had better memory. It was offered with the Blu-ray player. The 360 came out with the HD DVD player, which even back when those two formats were out, I didn't see HD DVD doing much better than Blu-ray. I had the PS3 for about a month, and then all my other friends bought 360s. And when you got 5, 6, 7 friends all playing 360, and then you're the only dipshit with a PlayStation 3, I had to go trade in my PlayStation 3 to buy a 360 so I could play games with my friends because, at that point, I think I just graduated high school or getting close to it, so once again, it was that social aspect of gaming. I didn't want to play video games because I really enjoyed the video game part. It was more, because at that time I wanted to, talk shit with my friends and that kind of stuff. And you couldn't do that, on different consoles. And the only game that I even had on the PlayStation 3 was Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the first one.
Yeah, I never owned a PlayStation 3. I couldn't tell you the story of how I even got a Xbox 360. I would guess it's Christmas time. I really don't remember. I just know that we never went down the road of PlayStation maybe it was Xbox Live because it wasn't the big thing for Xbox 360 was Gears of War coming out then, and that really wasn't a game that necessarily pushed me in one way or the other. I'm not really sure. Trying to think back, what drew me to 360 versus PlayStation, and I really don't know. I have no idea. Maybe it was they're talking about maybe the Fables or something like that. I really honestly can't remember what pushed me in that direction.
Probably the
Maybe
price.
it was a price point. Yeah, maybe it was just the price point, because it's a lot easier to convince your parents to spend. Not that it's easy at all, but it's easier to spend 300 versus 500. And maybe that was just the only thing that mattered, and that could have been, especially at this time period in my life. So that would be my guess. As we've looked at the console sales, obviously PlayStation still outsold Xbox in this particular generation, as they've done every generation, and probably will continue to do for every generation. PlayStation seems to have a very hardcore group of fans that just refuse to buy the Xbox, and that's mostly on the West, in Japan and things like that, where it just cannot seem to grab a hold, which is hard to do when that's where the PlayStation is. But we'll go ahead and jump into 360, considering, like I said, there's just not a lot for me and you to talk about regarding the PlayStation, regardless of how good of a console it was. I mean, there was a lot of great games that are only available on the PlayStation that were released. That almost made me spend the money, because a lot of those games like God of War and things like that, I just really wanted to play. I just never had the opportunity because I never bought the particular console. So something that I may do in the future, who knows, just because, you want an opportunity to play some of those cool games that were released on a console that you just never had the opportunity to play.
Just to tack on before we shift gears into 360, no pun intended. The Xbox 360, it sold 25.4 million in the US, and the PlayStation 3 sold 22.9. So
Yep.
The Xbox 360 won in America, but worldwide, the 360 sold 84 million units, and the PlayStation 3 sold 87.4. So once again, PlayStation beat out Xbox. That just goes to show you how much of a bigger following it has, over there in Europe and Asia, and especially Japan.
Yeah, I mean, the particular, like I said, if you could break it down in just Japan, I'm sure that it was like a giant number. Like, I'm sure PlayStation probably, I don't know what the number would be, but like 10 times, sold 10 or 15 times more than the Xbox. It's just, they're a different culture for sure. It's something it's hard to break into. Yeah, if you've got any other closing thoughts about PlayStation, if not, we'll go ahead and jump into the Xbox 360.
Nah, I don't have anything else for it. I only played it for a month.
Okay, all right. So, with the Xbox 360, this is probably well, let me get the release date and stuff out of the way, and then we'll jump into it. So the Xbox 360 was released November 22nd of 2005. Cost was about $299. Adjusted for inflation, it's only about $395, which is still a very reasonable price for a console today. This is peak fandom, peak gaming, peak everything for me personally. This is like, this time period is fondly as we think about like the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, even Sega Genesis to a significantly lesser degree.
It's prime
as
time.
well as we think about those. Yeah, this is as good as it gets, because not only did you have the ability to play with friends at four people or so in the home, but now you have the ability to play with your friends online. Not that it was available slightly on the Xbox, but the improvement here is just like so drastic that it's sort of insane to think that the difference in that the Xbox was released. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick.
And the
It
other
was
thing
released in
too,
2001, so you're talking 4 years difference here.
the other thing too that you have to think about is when these consoles released at this point in our lives, we were already getting our licenses and starting to drive, and go to high school. That once again, that social aspect was very strong when these consoles come out, and just having that ability to drive over to your buddy's house.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean the huge thing about the Xbox 360, like we're both kind of hitting on here, is that not only do you have that flexibility that you could just take your controller or your console and go to your buddy's house and play, but you do have the ability now to where that you don't necessarily have to. You can just stay at the house and play over the internet and be able to. And I know it seems wild now, where kids are like, "Yeah, duh, you can do that. That's what you can do. You can do that on a phone, completely wireless." But this is like revolutionary stuff for a console to be able to do. You could already do it on the PC, but it hadn't quite made its way until now. Well, at least in the functioning and the ability that we know more so today. Obviously, the original Xbox and the Dreamcast had the ability to do so, but they weren't you're not talking about. I mean, we're basically talking about the dark ages compared to 360. It's amazing that just the jump in 4 years in terms of the amount of content and the way that you can kind of access that content.
Yeah, because Xbox Live exploded during 360. I mean, it was around when the Xbox came out, but it was not very good. It was kind of just bare bones. You know, you hook up to the internet, you play your game, and you get into a game with other people. You couldn't really use headsets. You couldn't really talk shit to each other. It was just bare bones multiplayer gaming. When the 360 came out, it had the new user interface with the Xbox Live, you know, the dashboard, and that's what really set it off.
Yeah, that dashboard, even just the original one was so smooth and crisp. And I remember I didn't really get Xbox Live at the beginning when it first came out. I know the first few years I didn't have it because the majority of the people I played with, we were still playing a lot of sports games and a lot of co-op games because, again, this, as I've said in every podcast that we've talked about up to this point, my brother was still around. It's not like he disappeared. He was playing with us. So it was one of those things where I still needed to play a lot of co-op games. And then we'd play sports games where we could play together on one screen. So it wasn't until probably, I don't know, 2008 or 9. So we were way into the console wars or into this particular generation by that point when I got Xbox Live. And it was like a whole new world. It was like, oh, it opened the whole world to me. It's kind of crazy because, I think what really did it for me was you would hear about DLCs, and we'll talk about DLCs later, but it's one of those things where you'll hear about, there's additional content on this particular game that you love. Certain games, like I remember playing the original Borderlands, and they had extra DLCs that they added later on. At this time, me and my brother started to become, him more so than me, we were like achievement hunters. I mean, it is what it is. The achievement system also changed the game too, because it was only on the Xbox 360 and it came forward, but they introduced it in the 360, and it gave you something to sort of push for and to finish, in a way to kind of like strategically plan out. Oh well, I still need to do this, 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 and this, and this. So it's something pretty cool. So it was one of those things where I did it because we rented Borderlands 1 from GameFly, which was around at the time. I don't know if it's still around now, but yeah. So I was using that because it was pretty cheap, and you could get a lot of the older games at that time pretty easily. And Borderlands 1 was one of the games that we rented, and we really enjoyed it. And then they did actually release a hard copy, like the Platinum Edition or something like that, where it came with all the DLCs. So that's the game that I ended up buying. But it gave me an opportunity to look into the Xbox Live. So that's the only reason why I even got into it, was for some of the extra DLCs, which is kind of crazy when you think about it today and how much they added. Like Netflix, that you needed a subscription. I don't know if you still do, but you needed it at the time. You needed a Xbox Live subscription to be able to use that. And this is when streaming was starting to become a thing, was during the same time period. It's kind of amazing when you think the explosion of just technology throughout the Xbox 360's particular generation,
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't even think about Netflix and Hulu and all those movie services. I'm pretty sure the 360 came out with its own Internet Explorer as well, which the PlayStation already was doing this stuff, but to put the the Netflix and the Hulu and all that stuff, because ideally, even to this day, that is what I use my Xbox for most of the time now. It is basically it's like when they released the Xbox One and they marketed it as a all-in-one entertainment device. That's what I still use it for today. I don't really use it for gaming. I just bought a $3,000 PC. That's my gaming rig. But I don't watch Netflix and stuff on my PC just because it's not very comfortable to do so. It's a lot more comfortable to sit on my nice couch in my living room in my home theater and take it all in. It's not very comfortable to do that in a computer chair, wearing headphones, watching a movie. Different applications for different things.
Yeah, 100%. I think that like I said, it's just kind of crazy to think about all the different things that they added. And I remember vividly this time period early in this console generation where, Netflix was still only a DVD subscription base where you had to get one in the mail and watch it. And then GameFly, they were selling games on the marketplace, but it's not like it is today where that's basically the source of basically every game that you purchase. I mean, there's really no reason not to. especially where you can share with, like, for example, me and my brother, we can share the game. So any game I buy, he plays. Any game he buys, I play. So we don't have to worry about that. So it cuts our costs down. But it's sort of crazy to think about just the explosion and kind of everything that happened. 360, like I said, is peak fandom for me. And a lot of the things that they added, like I said, I remember vividly watching Dexter on Netflix and being like, "Wow, man! Like all this shit's out there." Like I never had Showtime, but on Netflix they had added a lot of the Showtime. I guess that was the first person they made a deal with, because I know that was on their Californication. A lot of movies, TV shows that I watched is actually because of Netflix, and I think Netflix is kind of moving away from that a little bit today. That's a different topic and a different time, but when I was a kid and or younger, I guess we were young adults at this time, almost, a men, I guess. But at this time period, it was like, you had all the video games, and then they were transitioning into this entertainment hub where they had all these other streaming services that were becoming available. It's just wild to think about when you kind of go back in time and start to try to piece all this together, and just remembering like the first time I downloaded the Netflix app, or because I was a subscriber, they were like, "Hey, you can also access some of this content on our new app and stuff like that." I'm like, "What the hell is this?" So this is kind of amazing, just how far we've come from back then.
For sure. So do you want to go ahead and kick off some of the games that we played, or do you want to start with the most popular selling games for the console?
I think, yeah, let's do the top 10 first, and then we can go ahead into some of the games that we particularly played that may not be in the top 10.
Alrighty. So the top 10 games on 360. Number 1, Kinect Adventures, which is because it was sold with the Kinect system itself. Number 2, the first real game. I'll go ahead and put that at number 1. Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops. Number 5 is actually a tie between Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim. So 5 and 6, but they tied. 7, yep. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which I think is probably one of the better Call of Duties. It's either a toss-up between 2 or 3. I can't remember them. Yeah. Number 8 is Minecraft. Number 9, Halo 3. And number 10 is Grand Theft Auto 4. And I'm also
crazy list.
I'm also going to go down a little bit more because 12 was Halo Reach, 13 was Halo 4, and 14 is Gears of War. And I had to get Gears of 15? War on there.
What's 15?
Gears 2.
Yeah, they tied. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And then Batman Arkham City right behind it. I had to get some difference in the list, you know what I mean? Call of Duty was carrying it too hard.
Call of Duty had an exclusive. I mean, they weren't exclusive to just the Xbox, but they had like map exclusives at this time, I'm pretty sure, right?
I don't remember.
I think so. I'm pretty sure they did. I think they switched, and now it's PlayStation who has exclusive maps. But back then, I'm pretty sure it was Call of Duty. Anyway, so within this top 10 or top 15 or 16, how many ever we ended up reading, I think the game that at least changed for me the most, when I moved to North Carolina in 2011, I think. Yeah, 2011. And Call of Duty Modern Warfare was released just after that. So I moved here October 2011, and it was released in 2011 in November. So that was probably the first game that we all played together. I remember specifically playing with Paul and you, and we got John into it. So it was the four of us. And then at some point, we were just switching in and out people, Yeah. There was like, we had a whole party of like 8 people. We almost had both teams at one point. It's just, in those days, I don't know if they'll ever come back, but it's amazing just to think about that. And like, you start to learn and get to know people. And like, I'd never met, for example, Tyler. I'd never met some of these people because we play with them. And then eventually I got to meet them and there's still some pretty cool dudes, but it's just kind of funny that one, I guess, in a lot of ways changed my North Carolina experience, because before Modern Warfare 3, it was just, I mean, we still would talk and stuff at work, but it helped kind of make us all become friends, I guess. And that I credit that almost entirely to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3.
So what you're saying is that you moved all the way up here from Florida, didn't know anybody, and then you met me, and I'm so awesome that you decided to stay here. I got you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's exactly what. That's actually the exact storyline that happened. Yeah, if I made a movie about it, it would be like you would be the angel and the light would shine down directly on you when I saw you with your shredded ass fucking sweatshirt on.
Yeah.
And it would just everything would just like explode and it'd be like, it's all because of Bud. Yep. That's exactly what happened.
I would watch that movie. I think I'd
yeah,
be
so,
the
I
only
mean-
one.
Probably. So that was definitely the first game that kind of like transitioned my life here. Other games that I think the one that kind of did it for us after that was Diablo 3. I don't know when it was released. I don't have that up, but I remember us playing that. It wasn't on the console, of course. We played it when it was released on the PC, and we played it together on the PC for a while, and that was an absolute disaster. We probably could almost do an entire podcast just on Diablo 3 and how much it changed throughout time because it was an absolute mess when it first came out. But that was another game that me, you, and Little John played together.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Real life money purchases ruins video games. Pay to win is not a good thing.
No, and I don't know. I can't explain why they thought that was a good idea. I don't know that to be true, but or why they thought that was to be a good idea. But
Because they're Blizzard, they're greedy.
I guess you got to give them a chance. I guess, and part of it you got to say, well, at least they gave it a shot. But yeah, there's a big part of it where you're saying that's just stupid. Is there any games that you want to talk about specifically that aren't maybe not, or do you have any thoughts or reflections on the top 15 or 16 that we read?
As far as the top list, I mean, I can see and I agree. Like Skyrim is not my style game, but obviously it still has a massive following to this day. Grand Theft Auto 5, I did play that one. It was okay. I think at that point in my life, though, I kind of shifted away from the Grand Theft Auto series. Like, I loved Vice City and San Andreas. And I played 4 and I played 5. 5 was kind of cool because it introduced how you could play as 3 different people and switch to them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Call of Duty, I was never a fan of the Black Ops series because they were made by Treyarch. I've always been one of those people that's like, I don't like games that are set in the past. I prefer either present day or futuristic stuff. So I just never really liked the Black Ops series. Not to say that they're bad games, because, it's Call of Duty. It's the same game since 2007.
Yeah.
Minecraft, once again, it's not my thing. I understand why it's so popular, especially the appeal to kids. Halo 3, to steal your line, that was my jam. Halo 2, more specifically. And Gears, I could probably do a whole podcast episode about Gears. Because that was Gears 1, Halo 2, and Halo 3 was one of those games where we used to take our consoles and go to a buddy's house after high school let out, and we would just hook them up to a router and have a massive LAN party. So we'd have like 32 people in some dude's basement. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it was probably some of the best moments I've had in my life because, we would just play multiplayer, especially like in Halo 2. We just boot up a game and do big team battle, and we'd play for hours. And after we get done, we go up to Hickory and go get some dinner and mess around, try not to catch speeding tickets and reckless driving tickets, and then come back home, or to his house, I should say, and we keep going again. And this is our weekends pretty much. This is just what we did. And Gears, I think Gears really captivated me because even though Halo, I don't want to say Halo, like, it's a realistic sci-fi game. I know that makes no sense, but it didn't have like that cartoony style graphics. But Gears was really more adult oriented. You can chainsaw people in half. The headshots and stuff, like just the sound effects that they make when you crack their skull open was great. All the blood in the game. And at its core, too, it played completely different than Halo. Halo is like every other shooter on the market. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Unreal 3 and Call of Duty. It's just you run out there and you shoot things. Whereas Gears was more derived around their cover system. So it was more a strategic shooter. Like, if you just run in there and just start plowing people over, you can do that. But you can also sit back and kind of pick your moment when to do things. And Gears to me was just one of those games where I played a lot of hours in Gears 1. some of these other games here, these are all just kind of time fillers, between Gears of War releases and Halo releases. Some other games on my list, like the Batman Arkham games, those were, really good for what they were. They didn't follow the comics. They kind of implemented their own story. I've always been a Batman fan. Assassin's Creed games 1, 2, and 3. I'm not going to say those games were great, in my opinion. The stories were good because it was a fresh take on something that was kind of based on realism, but it wasn't. The gameplay just wasn't really that fun for me on the Assassin's Creed games. At this time, the Guitar Heroes and the Rock Band games, I played every single one of those. And then the Fable games, Fable 1, 2, and 3. Once again, it was one of those style games where the story was okay and the gameplay was actually pretty fun because, you could go, either magic or ranged or melee. And it was just, at that time, it's kind of like a cartoonier version of Diablo for me. I've always been a fan of RPGs, but I don't like those super immersive RPGs like Skyrim or Fallout, that kind of stuff. What about you?
To double back around on Gears real quickly. Yeah, the cool thing about Gears was it was a co-op game, or you could play the campaign and stuff as co-op. Again, I really wasn't into the Xbox Live just yet once some of these games were released, so I didn't get to play them online, at least not in their original iterations, So I played them later when you could barely find a match, but at that time period, it was a lot. For me, we got to play through the actual campaign, me and my brother split screening it. And that just gave us another game to kind of play and to get immersed in, and that was something that I found to be, huge for me and him. Doubling back on the Grand Theft Autos, I liked 4 better than 5. That's just my personal preference. I like to follow one person. I think splitting it up into 3 people was too much for me. I made it maybe 10, 15 minutes into the story on Grand Theft Auto 5, and I was done. I played online on Grand Theft Auto 5 with my brother and John, but that was in Xbox One days, not in 360. But I did like the heist and things like that you could do. It was a lot of fun. Doubling back on like Call of Duty and some of that. Basically, after Modern Warfare 3, we bought 1 or 2 more. Ghost might have been the last Call of Duty game I purchased. It was an absolute letdown. That was it for me. I was done. I never really got into the Halos. We've talked about that before. Obviously, you call me a loser or whatever. Just really wasn't my style. Minecraft. I just want to double back one more time to Minecraft. That was a game that my brother and Little John got me into. And I call Little John because my brother's name is John. So we have 2 Johns, and it's easier to call them John and Little John than to have to do something else, just to clarify.
Yeah, it's not the rapper.
And no, he's not over here yelling. What did he always say? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and what?
What? Yeah, so that's not what's happening here. But yeah, so they got me into it. I think John, my brother, and Little John, originally, Little John played it on the PC, I guess it was. And then they kind of got me into it. And I actually got really immersed into it at first because it was just something different. And I like survival games. And it's obviously cartoony and blocky and things like that. And I was like, man, I would never like this game. And then just the like fighting zombies at night and that sort of stuff, it really got me into it. So I really enjoyed the game. It got better once it got imported from Xbox 360 into the Xbox One, as they were able to kind of merge the servers or a lot of the content anyway that you can play on the PC into the actual console version. Assassin's Creed, I still play almost all of them. They become a lot like Call of Duty, as they're basically the same game. They just set in different time periods. They add a little thing here, a little thing there. Assassin's Creed 2 and the Ezio storyline is easily probably the best. That's peak Ubisoft
Agreed.
and peak Assassin's Creed. All 3 games, like, think about this. They haven't made the same game again. Ezio managed to get 3 games. He had 3 storylines, Desmond was in all 3 of the games of 2, and then he was in 3, and then he was done at that point. So the main quote unquote main character was in 4 games, or what is that, 3, 4, 5 games. but Ezio managed to have 3 games just to him himself, and he was easily the best. I really liked 3 and 4. I don't. 4 was released on 360 as well. There's also a game called Rogue, just to kind of go down on it, and that was about an ex-assassin who becomes a Templar. So I think that they did a great job kind of like exploring everything. I guess I liked 3 a lot because it was about the colonies in America and the Revolution. So I always thought that was pretty cool, especially coming through the eyes of a Native American. And 4 was, not counting 2, Black Flag, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was my favorite one. I liked the sea battles. I guess they tried to do that in 3 a little bit, but it wasn't the same thing. 4, they just improved on it 100%. I like the voice actor. I don't remember his name, but he was also Constantine on that short-lived series, and then he was also in some of the Flash and Arrow episodes. So I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but he's a voice actor for that, and I really liked I just really liked the ability to kind of move between the Caribbean and that sort of stuff, and like all that. So the online multiplayer has always been, I'm going to just be frank here, it's been shit. I've never enjoyed the Assassin's Creed multiplayer. I tried to play it with my brother a few times. It's just not very good.
It's too laggy, if I remember it right. It's like playing an MMO in town. You just can't do anything.
And you're just running around trying to kill people, like trying to stealth them. So just, I don't know. It just wasn't my cup of tea, I guess. I don't want to beat it up too bad, but I really loved all the games though, and I really still do. I'm so behind. They re-released or they remastered Assassin's Creed 3, so I'm playing that every so often on the Xbox One. But I basically bought every iteration of Assassin's Creed, and I still play them to this day. It's still a lot of fun. Go over the Batman games real quick. I was very hesitant to start the Batman games because, as we've talked about previously, these games, just for whatever reason, not this particular set, but movie and comic book games, they pretty much all suck ass. It's just, it is what it is. And this particular set of the Arkham series, I really got into Arkham Asylum, and it was definitely it's probably my favorite of the series. I liked City. It was a lot of fun too because it was just different. But I definitely preferred. What is the other one? I can't remember. Arkham Knight, I think it is.
Yeah, there's Knight, Origins, City, and Asylum.
I never played Origins. Asylum is definitely my favorite of the 4. Then I thought it was only 3. I forgot about Origins. So, but yeah, Arkham Asylum was a lot of fun because it's a small map, and that's nice. Because sometimes they get a little too big and it's kind of too much. So I liked the smaller map. I like the ability to kind of like maneuver within that map. So I definitely preferred that over the other 3 games. Fable is the other game that you talked about that I just want to hit on real quick. Fable 2 and 3, in my mind, they kind of like went in a totally different direction than Fable 1, but I did still enjoy them. Fable 3 I liked a lot. I did like that you had to make decisions on whether or not you were going to save Albion.
Yeah.
And each decision you made affected how many people survived at the end of the game, and that was pretty awesome. Apparently I made all the bad decisions because there was nobody left when I finished the game the first time, and it was just me.
Yeah, you became the Activision of Albion.
Yeah, it was just me, myself, and I sitting there, running between all these towns, and there's nobody there. So that was not my thing. I was very frustrated by that because I thought if I picked all the, the right, what I quote unquote thought was the right thing, that it would help everybody, but it ended up hurting every single person. Everybody died. So that was a weird story for me.
And at that point, you knew you weren't a businessman.
Yeah, I knew I had some work to do if I decided I wanted to go down that route for sure. I'll let you go if there's any other games that you want to jump on real quick before I go into my extremely long list of video games that you will have nothing really to say about.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much this whole podcast, ain't it?
It seems like it. It's just me, myself talking and you saying a yeah, sure, or that's right.
Yeah, I chirp in every now and then just to let you know I'm still awake.
That's right.
About the only game, I played Fight Night Round 3. There's not really much to talk about with that game. It's a boxing game. Yep. Left 4 Dead, I played that with some homies. It was kind of fun for a little bit. Nothing to write home about. The cool thing about that game was adding in the witch.
Yeah.
And walking around a map, and then, you kind of hear that faint I don't know what word to use. I guess her
She was like
cry.
whimpering,
Yeah,
cry, yeah.
that faint sound, and you're like, "Uh-oh, she's close." And then everybody's tiptoeing, around corners and stuff. It was kind of fun doing that.
Yep.
I played Trials, which, once again, nothing really to talk about that game. Kind of reminded me of like Line Rider on Flash. Street Fighter 4. That is one of those games that I did not see that game coming at all. Like, I played Street Fighter on Super Nintendo, and it was, to me, just like Mortal Kombat. It's just a fighting game that you might play for a few hours, and you never look back at it. But my roommate Paul got Street Fighter 4, and he started playing that game hardcore, and I started playing it with him. And we would play this game all day, every day, for a long time. And I think number one, the thing that got me to play it was the competition. You know what I mean? Because it was kind of like that Guitar Hero thing for me and him. He was better at Guitar Hero, so he wanted to keep playing it until I got better at it. And then he said, screw it, I'm done. Street Fighter 4 was the same way. He had been playing this game for like a couple weeks or a month or so. And then we started playing together, and I was always behind him as far as skill goes. But I didn't realize how actually advanced those fighting games are, like as far as like the combo systems and frame counting, and that kind of stuff. It's not like you can play them as button mashers, but as any actual fighting game person knows, if you know a fighting game and you run across a button masher, you can easily wipe the floor with them because you understand the timing of the attacks. You understand how many frames which ability does, how many startup frames it has, how many recovery frames it has, that kind of stuff. And for a fighting game, I mean, I didn't play as much as Paul, but Paul has probably got about 1,500 hours in that game, and I'd say I'm probably somewhere around 600 to 800 on it. We played that game a lot, and we played all versions of it too. So I think it was like Street Fighter 4, then they come out with Arcade Edition, then they come out with Super Street Fighter 4, then they came out with the Ultimate. I mean, you know how Street Fighter is with their different versions. We played all of them.
That's a great story about Street Fighter. Anyway, all right. Well, I do recall, honestly, I recall you guys having a lot of conversations about Street Fighter and, throwing around I could beat you at this or I could beat you at that. And of course, I was lost. I didn't have a clue what you guys were talking about, but I do recall that very much between the two of you. Some other games that I might be or that I was interested in, and I did play quite often. Obviously, the BioShock series.
I played those.
I never played. Yeah, I mean, they were fun. I particularly enjoyed the original BioShock. It was just completely different, and I think that was a big part of it for me. I never really played Infinite. I think it was just I just kind of grew out of that particular series in general, but I really liked BioShock 1 and 2, them being set in Rapture and it being like this underwater area and all that stuff. It was really cool. The visuals and the graphics were awesome. Just a wonderful, actually, really just a great game in all honesty. Another one I just want to hit on really strong about is the Madden series in general. The Xbox 360, it made a huge jump in. Specifically, I want to talk about Madden 10. It has nothing to do necessarily with gameplay and has everything to do with the fact that they introduced where you could play online with 31 other players in a franchise like online community. So you'd get together 31 other people and each person would control an NFL team. It's gotten even more in depth than then, but in 2010 this was 2009. That was an awesome game for me. I ended up I was on a message board, I guess, somehow, and I ended up where they were talking about Madden and they were getting together an entire group of 31 other players. And somehow, thinking back on this is kind of funny, the only team that was available was the Carolina Panthers. So that's kind of unusual, but it's sort of set the tone, I guess, for my future. But that's the game. That's the team I ended up with. We had the incomparable Jimmy Clausen at the time. And we had two good running backs. So we had a pretty decent team, but they were not a team that people wanted to use. So I ended up with them, and I did win a Super Bowl, which is pretty cool. Not that it really matters. It's like game bragging. It doesn't really make sense, but I'm going to, so screw it. And I after that, Madden I still played, but I didn't play the online. For whatever reason, Madden 10 sort of encapsulated everything for me, and I had time. I was on third shift. I played third shift for a long time, but I was on third shift at the time, and just everything lined up perfectly. Another game, just to kind of deep dive into a little bit, was Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel. All three of those games were on the 360. Most of them, I think, made it over to the Xbox One as well, but I played them, especially Borderlands 1 and 2. I played those a lot. We all played together on Borderlands 2, but Borderlands 1, I remember you have a funny story about Borderlands 1 if you want to it's a short story, but if you want to go ahead and run that real quick.
Yeah, I didn't play that game because the game engine was crap. And what I mean by that is I played it for about 10 minutes and then I got stuck on a pebble and I couldn't walk forward. So I just shut the console down. And that was the end of my Borderlands 1 career.
And he missed out on some awesome stuff. But yes,
No, I didn't.
Yeah, Borderlands 1 was awesome. I liked a lot of the boss fights. Again, it was a game that I could play with my brother, split screen. I cannot harp on that enough and how much that made a difference in the games that we played. But Borderlands 2 sort of took it to a whole new level. As you've mentioned, beating up on Terramorphous, as I would have never remembered that name. And other things, other DLCs and all the stuff that they added in Borderlands 2 is just sort of kind of funny. That was kind of the game we moved on after, more or less after Call of Duty. I mean, it wasn't a direct progression, but it was like more or less that was like the next big game before Destiny came out that we all played together, right?
Yeah. The funny thing is Destiny's not even in the top list of selling at 360 games. Because if you remember when that game released, it had a lot of heat on it.
Yeah, I didn't really mind. The biggest issue was,
Content.
if I remember right, was content and then was drop rates. So they got pissed off because everybody found the loot cave, right? And they wanted to get rid of the loot cave because they didn't want people to be able to get purple gear. They wanted you to make you do the raid. That was the goal. They wanted you to go do the raids. Now it's not really that, but you know.
The main thing was whenever that guy hacked into outside of the wall and found the completely open area that was obviously DLC content. That's what pissed a lot of people off because they had already made like DLC stuff for the game, and the game has only been out for like a week, I think, when someone found this, and that didn't sit right with a lot of people. I didn't know because I didn't start playing Destiny until Xbox One. I mean, I played it on 360, but once again, it was one of them games where the game engine was crap, so I just didn't play it, and all them Destiny guys were rambling on about how it was a terrible game and all that. I didn't play it until they revamped it on Xbox One. I don't know if they actually changed the game engine for Xbox One, but it did play a lot better.
I remember the release date was pretty close. Like I don't know, I don't have the timeline in front of me, but I know that the original Destiny was released right around the time when we were transitioning between 360 and Xbox One anyway.
Yeah, I think it may have been a couple months.
Yeah, so it was just one of those weird ones where you just kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. But it was still a fun game. I enjoyed it. My brother and I played it, which if my brother could play it for any period of time, that says a lot. But he didn't get back into it until it was on the Xbox One in The Taken King. That's when he got back into Destiny, the original Destiny, for a while. A couple of the games I just want to gloss over a little bit, not much. Army of Two. And the only reason we gave it a chance was because you could play, obviously, it's a split screen co-op game. And it was decent, but if on my list of games, it'd be near the bottom of the games that I would recommend for sure. Not an interesting game I mean, it had fun moments, but it wasn't a game I would put a lot of effort or time into.
The idea of it was good because there wasn't a lot, like there was a ton of co-op games, but it was just running through a campaign together. There wasn't very much interaction between each other. It was like, oh, you died, you suck, I gotta go pick you up. My back hurts from carrying you through the story. And that's all it was. Or it was just straight up multiplayer, like you get in a lobby with your buddy and go kill other teams. Yep. Army of Two marketed it as a truly co-op game. Like you can't get over this wall unless your homeboy is over here to throw you over the wall.
It was definitely a good idea. Obviously, if you didn't have a second person, you had the computer to help you, but it was something that, it wasn't a situation where you're off, like in Borderlands, you're off running doing something, I'm off running doing something, then if I need your help, you just come help me. You know what I'm saying? It was definitely where it required actual cooperation. Isn't that freaking crazy? Other games have improved on this, of course, like Unravel 2 and things like that. But at the time, we're talking, in the mid to early 2000s, mid 2000s, mid to late 2000s, games that are kind of like, trying things out, I guess. It definitely tried. It wasn't super successful, but it did its best for sure.
Didn't EA make that?
Yeah, I think EA, well, they were at least the publisher. I don't know if they made it necessarily, but yeah, they were definitely attached to it.
Yeah, that says a lot right there.
And it's never been released on their what's it called, the
EA Play.
On their EA Play, right? So obviously they don't give a shit about it. They thought it was a big failure as we did, right?
That's pretty bad.
Don't hit the pause button. We're still rolling, but it's time for some questions. It's that time again. It's question time. All right, bud. We're on death row. We get our last meal. What's yours?
Oh man, what are we on death row for? Well, I don't know. That's a tough one. I've never really thought about it, but I guess if I was in death row, I'd probably have a lot of time to actually think about it. Off the top of my head here, I'd probably have to go with sushi, steak, and mashed potatoes, and about a 5-gallon bucket of Dr. Pepper. Yeah, that's probably what I'd go with. What would you eat?
Oh, man. I think that if I was eating prison food until I was on my final meal, I would be asking for absolutely everything. Fried chicken, good fried chicken. Steak, I'd be asking for mashed potatoes like you. I love mashed potatoes. A whole thing of lasagna. If I had to wash it down, I guess give me some good old-fashioned sweet tea. And that'll be a good way to die, I guess.
And now that question time is done, let's get back to the show.
A couple of little small ones that I don't really have anything to really say about, except for they were decent, fun games. Sleeping Dogs. It was similar to like Mafia 2 and those. Well, in terms of the gameplay, but not necessarily in the storyline. But it was similar. The Crysis series was pretty fun. The Darksiders series, Prototype, Dante's Inferno, Mafia 2 specifically, Bully. Bully was a game that Rockstar made that was, I guess, I don't think it would be marketed to kids, but it was like supposed to be you in a boarding school or a prep school, and you kind of run around and you still do you steal people's bikes. You do some weird stuff like that where it's similar to like a Grand Theft Auto, but it was set in a different time period. So I enjoyed the game. I had a lot of fun playing it. You had to hurry up and get to bed, otherwise you would pass out like on the side of the road. Like there's a lot of cool things that they added into it that definitely made it a fun game anyway. 2 games that I want to touch on pretty hardcore. Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. That game had all the potential in the world. It ended up going out of business, had an issue. It was owned by Kurt Schilling, which is a star baseball player. He owned the the developer who made the game. Originally, it was marketed to be an MMORPG. I guess they got stuck in hell with making the game, and it got transformed into just a first-person RPG. But it's definitely one of the best. They enlisted R.A. Salvatore, who wrote a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons and even some of the EverQuest series books. He's one of the probably most famed RPG or fantasy writers out there outside of Tolkien.
J.K. Rowling,
definitely
Harry Potter, yeah.
So between those, I guess he's definitely in that realm, though. He probably doesn't have the same fame, but he's definitely, in terms of content and quality, he's up there. It's a game that I probably played that game a lot. It was an accident, really, because I remember hearing about it, and then you didn't hear about it for a long time, and then it got released, and then you were like, I don't know, and then you play it, and it plays so smooth, and it's just amazing. It's been re-released on the Xbox One now. It's on my list of games that I'm going to think about, but I'm not paying $40 for a re-released game. That's not much different, but maybe one day. Another game that has a weird past and a weird history, Too Human. I don't know if you ever played that, bud, but it was a really fun game. It actually got sued out of existence because they had an unauthorized use of the Unreal Engine. You can fucking believe that.
Oh, wow.
So Epic basically sued them out of existence. So
they have every right to do so if they never asked them.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how the hell that ended up happening. I guess they were using that engine to supplement their engine, and I didn't read the whole story, but I do know that that's basically what happened. Was they got sued because of unauthorized use of the Unreal Engine, which is just ridiculous to think about. But
It'd be like us
one of the
using our podcast under Joe Rogan's name.
yeah,
You know,
it's just
without
it's
his
so
permission.
wild. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know how you would have thought that that was something. And then you were like a major. They were a pretty major, developer. It's not like they were just some. I don't remember other games that they've made or anything off the top of my head, but they weren't just some me and you on the side of the road or me and you in our basement putting together a video game. So they were a Nordic or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. I know that it's free now on Xbox on the marketplace. Who was it? Silicon Knights? That's who made it. They were the developer. It was published by Microsoft, which makes it even more hilarious that they published it afterwards. It's Epic Games over the stolen version of the Unreal Engine 3 game engine has resulted in a $4.45 million suit. Isn't that insane? Insane. And being forced to destroy all of its product that used the Unreal Engine, including 2 Human. So, but what I don't know how they ended up re-releasing it because now it's free. I guess I would imagine that because Microsoft, I guess it flipped back to Microsoft because it's free on the Xbox marketplace now. I guess maybe they just couldn't sell it because it had the Unreal Engine. I guess they could publish it or put it out for free, but they couldn't sell it. So it was one of those things. It was a really fun game. It just got stuck in, like I said, the Unreal Engine issue. I don't know how the hell you do that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Seems a really stupid idea. But it was definitely a fun game for sure. One that I enjoyed a lot. Breach of contract and inadequacies of their support, supposedly. But yeah, so in 2019, at the bottom there, it says Microsoft re-released T-Human on the Xbox Game Store for free and made it backwards compatible so you could play on the Xbox One. So that's definitely really cool and just an opportunity for people to still play that game. It's available, like I said, for free if anybody's interested. It plays differently. It's a shooter, but it also has hand-to-hand combat. So you're using a sword, but you use the joystick, the right joystick, to use your sword, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I'm sure that story, if someone would talk about that one day, that whole thing would be a hell of an idea, a hell of a podcast, right? Just to hear kind of what the hell really happened there.
Yeah, almost
But
like a cyberpunk based thing before Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Well, they had planned like a trilogy. They were going to release 3 games, and then they just I can't comprehend how you can misuse or use something that you're not supposed to use and try to publish it.
No
blows my
kidding.
mind.
It's like making your own. It's like making your own car and then using a LS motor in it and claiming that it's yours.
Yeah, it's just mind blowing. I got a couple arcade games on here. The original Torchlight and Crimson Alliance. Me and you both played these games together.
I don't remember.
Obviously, yeah, they don't have a lot of content. Back in the day when they did DLCs or arcade games, they were meant to be smaller games. They were like $5 or $6, not super expensive. But basically, they're just a clone RPG of any other RPG out there. It's a lot of fun, but nothing major. But I just want to hit on them just so people know that they're out there. Games that I enjoyed anyway. A couple other little games. Alan Wake was a fun game. It was like I remember you had to use a flashlight. You want to turn it off at certain times. I don't think I ever beat it because I'd never been into like the horror style games or
You just call me a
whatever.
horror?
Like, yeah, that's what I said. Horror style
Okay.
games, like Resident Evil and that sort of thought process or gaming style. But that's just never been my thing. But I did play it. I had some fun, but I wouldn't call it one of my favorites. Bulletstorm. I'm pretty sure that was made by Epic. I think it was supposed to be like similar to Gears of War, except it didn't play anything like Gears of War, and it wasn't really that good. But it was still, I guess, it was still decent in its thought process. But
That has one of those titles that sounds like it's way too try hard to be badass.
yeah,
Is
Yeah.
that just me, or do you agree?
no, I agree. Bulletstorm sounds like it's supposed to be a fucking badass game. Like that's gonna be a game you're gonna have a lot of fun with. And I just remember using a hook and like you could like slide down telephone wires or whatever. I remember doing that, and I remember just shooting stuff. But I didn't enjoy the game really that much at all. Dead Island series, the particular Dead Island. That's a game my brother and Little John played a lot.
That's a zombie game, ain't it?
Yeah, it's a zombie game. It was still a lot of fun. I think you only can do co-op. Maybe you could play up to 4 players on different consoles. I can't remember, but we had a lot of fun playing that game. I remember that. My brother will tell. Maybe one day, Little John or my brother will be on here. They'll tell their funny stories about that. But I'll save that for them. Dragon Age, Origins 2, and Inquisition. Me and you played Inquisition together a little bit. That's a funny story. But
I don't remember it.
2, Dragon Age 2. People will say that Origins or Inquisition were better, but Dragon Age 2 is my favorite Dragon Age. Maybe it's because it's set in such a small area, and I like the simplification of the buttons. I don't know. I freaking love Dragon Age 2. Inquisition was fun. We tried to play it online, and the online version or the multiplayer version is absolute shit. That was like the worst multiplayer. Well, I've already said that about some of the other games, but this, Assassin's Creed, but this particular one, I remember I was like, hey man, you should get Dragon Age Inquisition. I assumed, and that was my fault, that the online version of the multiplayer would play similar to or maybe that was not my fault. Maybe that was their fault. They should have clarified, but
no, it was your fault for recommending it to me.
Yeah, but you would think it would play similar, right? And it doesn't. It plays nothing like it. It was laggy as hell. It played like shit. And I think we played like 3 matches, and that was it. We didn't last very long with that particular series, so they haven't made any more really since then. Apparently, they are in the process of making another Dragon Age game, but I would buy a Dragon Age 2 port over onto Xbox One. I would pay money for that. I enjoyed Dragon Age 2 that much.
That was another EA game, right?
Yeah, it was made by EA. Yeah, that one is in the EA Play though, so you can all those games are accessible in the EA Play game if you own that or have Game Pass right now, right? It's a part of Game Pass.
Yeah, Ultimate, I believe.
Yeah. Obviously, we got all the different Halo games. I didn't really play them, but you got Halo 3, Halo 4, ODST, Reach, Spartan Assault, Halo Wars. Plenty of games came out on there. Whatever. No, I'm just kidding. I remember playing Reach a little bit. That's about the only one I remember playing. I remember I think you told me that that's probably like the worst iteration of all the Halos in terms of...
No, Reach was
If
good.
you really wanted to get... It ended up being good, but I'm saying like, it's not the best one. If you really wanted to get into it, I should have played some of the other ones, I think.
Well, I think the biggest thing between me and you is, like you said, you had a brother. You were more in the co-op scene, whereas me growing up, I've always been kind of like a hothead, and I enjoy playing competitive games. I like talking shit to people. I like being at the top of the leaderboard. Like, to me, that's what makes gaming fun. Granted, as I've gotten older, my views have kind of shifted, and I don't care too much about that anymore. I'm more into like really good single player games. But I think at that time, that's why me and you didn't really play a lot of the same games. Like, if you take Call of Duty, that is a competitive game, but we didn't play it to be competitive. We just played it to goof around after work.
Yep, and have fun. Yeah, with all of our friends, right? So that was the benefit. I guess if I had Halo, I could have gotten into it if we were all playing. But the problem is that, you had tiers of players and tiers of friends that, in terms of how they played, better when we were all on the same page and playing good, either all going hardbore or no one going hardbore, because you look like an idiot when 1 or 2 are going hardbore and everybody else is just goofing off, right?
Well, yeah. And it was, like I said, it was that time period too, because when Halo 2 come out and Halo 3 come out, you were still in Florida.
Yeah.
So by the time that you had got down here and we became friends and started playing games together a lot, I'm pretty sure Halo 4 was the game at the time that came out. And I didn't really like Halo 4 because it was...
Maybe that was the one I was talking about, not Halo Reach.
Yeah,
maybe that was it.
It was the first Halo game made by 343, who currently does Halo.
Right.
And I don't really know if it was a bad game. I think it was more just I was so burnt out on Halo, because I'd played Halo 2, Halo 3, and Halo Reach for so long. And it's just like Gears. Like, I love the Gears games, but I played Gears 1, 2, and 3 for so long that any Gears game they drop now, I play the story. I don't even touch the multiplayer. It's just, I'm tired of playing sequels, and I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have to it depends on your expectations, but yeah, I totally agree. It depends 100% on how much different the game is, right? Like, I guess it all plays the same way. So yeah, it definitely can burn you out. A couple other games I just want to get. Obviously, a few games I got to get into. I get them out of the way. The entire sports series, MLB 2K series, NBA 2K series, NCAA football series, the NCAA basketball football series, NHL series. I'm sorry, through EA, the FIFA and NFL head coach. Okay,
And you didn't even name
No.
any of the good ones, like Slugfest or Blitz. Those are the sports games.
So these I had played a lot. Well, the thing is like the reason we played these games a lot is me and my brother can play. We could even play in the franchise and each have our own teams, that we're building or whatever. That was part of it for us. The big part was a lot of it is just playing with friends. So obviously, out of all the ones I named, the series we probably played the most of was the NBA 2K series or NBA Live. I can't remember. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But the NBA games, the reason we played them so much was we would create our own characters. So it'd be like, it would say, Scarborough, and it was me, Chris Scarborough. I would always be the point guard. My brother would always be, one of the guard, either the shooting guard or the small forward. And then my other two friends who would play, who just didn't play, sports or didn't really like basketball nearly as much, but just wanted to come have fun with us. They would play like center and power forward, which are the two bigger spots. Obviously, the game's changed since then, but at that time period,
I
we're
want to
talking.
be the referee.
Yeah, well, you could just stand over there and tell us we're doing a bad job, but we had a lot of fun because you're playing an entire season. So we would go in. It's 82 games. I don't know if we ever finished a season, but it's 82 games long. And what we do is we put it on like 10-minute quarters and put it on the max difficulty. Now, granted, on these creative characters, everything's at 100 or 99. So like we're maxed out characters. So it's not like we have to worry about a lot of the stuff, but it still was difficult especially when you don't have control over every single character, right? You only have control over your one character. We would lock your player so you couldn't switch. So I had to be the point guard and the point guard only. So I couldn't control the game. It's just like in real sports, you're putting the control or the faith in another player to be able to do their job too. And it's just it was a lot of fun. I remember having a lot of laughs. One of my friends, he named his character Buffalo Brett. So anytime I see him, that's his name, Buffalo Brett. It's just amazing the sort of dumb stuff we did. And we did the same thing with NHL. We would pick a team and we would just play. And that was with one of our buddies. His name was Mike. And we had a lot. It's just kind of crazy how much fun when you think about those time period. And with him, we would play a lot of the FIFA, which, FIFA series requires you to play, especially since, I was never really a huge soccer fan or football, depending upon where you're at. It's just not, it's growing in America, but it's not what it is across the globe. But we would play the FIFA series, the NHL series, and the NBA series. Those are the three games we'd play the most because you could play or the NCAA basketball series too, but anything where you could play as multiple players on the same team, up to 4 players, that's what we usually played. And we had a lot of fun. Like I said, just being able to goof off, learning FIFA, learning how to play NHL. Like I didn't know that you couldn't run ahead of the puck when you cross the line. NHL is huge in Canada and stuff, but it's not, or hockey is huge in Canada and it's, growing in America, but it's not, at least when I was a kid, it's not, it was basketball, baseball, and football. Those are our 3 sports. And, we have these other ones, but they were never there in terms of, my mind. So it's cool to play those games and you're playing a video game and learning about how the game works. Like how freaking cool is that? And it just really gave me a lot of options and like a lot of games that we could play as a group, right? Like your Halo LAN parties, it was similar to that. Obviously, we didn't do LAN party, but it was our opportunity to play a bunch of one game on one screen with 4 different players and have fun. And we didn't have to play split screen because it's just got that one hard camera shot where you're just looking at both ends of the court,
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
Did John trip over his feet in the video game too?
No. Yeah, sometimes. Both of them, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was some good times. Playing basketball on my wedding day.
Yeah.
We had some good times. A couple of other games. Obviously, we kind of went through this. I was going to have a lot more games to talk about than Bud. These are just going to be brief little. I'm just going to mention the game. I don't really have much to talk about, but I just want to give them a shout out. Just Cause series, Kane and Lynch 1 and 2, L.A. Noire, the Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Ultimate Alliance 2, we've already talked about Red Dead Redemption in a different podcast, but Red Dead Redemption, this is when it was originally released. The Red Faction series, Red Faction Guerrilla, Red Faction Armageddon, the Saints Row series, obviously Elder Scrolls, we mentioned that a little bit, but Sid Meier's Civilizations Revolution, what a fun game that was. I can't explain it. It's still out. I own it on the Xbox One. It's similar to like an Age of Empires or that sort of style. It gives you some cool stuff that you can do with it. It was just really fun, I guess. I don't really have a lot to say about it, but it was a fun game. Let's see. The Walking Dead series through Telltale. Telltale, they just, I guess, went out of business, but they released a lot of good stuff. The Wolf Among Us, The Walking Dead, the Borderlands Telltale series, the Batman one. I mean, they did a lot of really cool stuff and redid a lot of things to make that sort of gameplay fun again, I guess, right? Oh, one I didn't mention in that the sports genre was Tiger Woods PGA Tour. Me, my brother, and my cousin, his name is Mark, we used to play PGA Tour a lot. But we'd all play one character through season mode, but we would alternate holes and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a different style, I guess. Another one I want to hit on.
Someone
real quick
didn't come into the ass end of that.
Another one, Two Worlds 1 and 2. It was an RPG. It played, I guess, similar to the. I don't want anybody to get pissed off at me, but I guess the gameplay played similar to what you would have seen from like a Skyrim. Not necessarily as good, but it played similar. One funny game I want to mention is The Rise of Argonauts. I rented this game and I really loved it, but it was broken. Like, it's well known that there's certain parts of this game that you can't get through if things kind of fall a certain way and you have to restart the entire game. And the fact that they put this game out and they made it available for sale and it was absolutely broken and they didn't fix it. So at least these days they fix the games, right? Back in the day, they didn't do that, but definitely had a shit ton of fun with that. One other game to mention, 50 Cent's Blood on the Sand. Ridiculous, but it was still a really fun game. 4 players, you're playing rappers, running around killing people. Definitely a fun game. And I think that's mostly what I got down here, at least in terms of particular games. We already kind of mentioned and hit on Diablo 3 and Destiny as well, but yeah. What else you got for me, bud?
Do you remember the games that you got from the Burger King combo meals?
I do not.
I got them pulled up on the screen.
I see
here.
it.
It's Sneak King, Big Bumpin', and Pocket Bike Racer.
That is wild.
Yeah,
that is funny.
They finally got smart and they channeled, food with video games.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to get it.
Yeah, and this was way before, Mountain Dew was like the national like gamer fuel stuff and Doritos, with Call of Duty. I remember when those games were available through Burger King. They were terrible games, but just the idea of it, I thought
they tried.
Funny.
Yeah. The Doritos. What was that? It was like not Wipeout. I guess Wipeout, but the Doritos games. I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but they were fun too. The little arcade games they had. I wouldn't consider them amazing games, but they were a lot of fun. I guess you want to transition into some accessories. Unless you got any other closing thoughts about any other video games you could think of.
No, I done said everything I played. I'll remember something about a year from now.
Well, I'll let you lead in with a lot of these accessories then.
Alrighty. So accessories on 360. Obviously, there was multiple different controllers. I think this was the first time period where you could get like customized controllers, like different faceplates and different wraps, that kind of stuff. Also, this was about the same era that modded controllers started becoming a very serious issue, like in gaming on consoles. Because, they had rapid fire buttons all the way back in, Super Nintendo days. But these were controllers that were getting around. For example, like in Call of Duty, it has a fire limiter on there. So, you can only push the trigger so fast. And there were companies out here that would take how fast you were allowed to do, and they would program that speed into that button. So you could fire literally at the fastest point that Call of Duty would allow you to fire. If you're using a single shot weapon, pretty broken. Charge packs for the controllers. I remember that was cool. You didn't have to use batteries. The universal media remote. I know a lot of people had them. I never did. because I just use my controller. Let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, something that's often overlooked, and it's kind of a standard nowadays, is headsets. Microphones. Like we mentioned in the beginning of the show, 360 really catapulted with Xbox Live and communication and talking with your buddies. And the headset market just exploded, because all we had at first was like that little cheap one that came with the Xbox, the little plastic one that only went around one ear and had the mic, and you could only hear voice. It didn't play game audio.
Yep.
And look at where we are today. We've got $300-$400 headsets that people buy on consoles,
which is just mind blowing.
It is. Some other accessories to the Kinect. I feel like Xbox had big hopes for that, because I feel like
they really did.
I feel like they put a lot of time and marketing and research into it. Because we're heading into that time in society where like AI and motion tracking and that kind of stuff. So I really feel like Xbox really wanted that to do a lot better than it did. And, I think the reason it flopped so hard is because, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Wii was also in this generation, and Wii was just killing it. I bet the Wii
and I think they were cheaper.
Yeah, I bet the Wii probably sold more consoles than 360 and PlayStation, because it was $300 when it launched. And it was, they had that controller. It was just completely different style. And, of course, they had their Marios and that kind of stuff, but they were just killing it on the motion with the controller. And Kinect's only thing was like, we use your full body. And I think the issue is that most gamers are probably overweight, so they don't want to use their whole body.
I'm using a damn controller because I don't want to move.
Yeah.
But for some clarification, we launched at $250. So yeah, it was even cheaper than you said. So
oh wow,
$250 was a super cheap console, and that was when it launched. So I think it was basically marketed at $199 for the majority of its lifespan.
Yeah, I remember I bought a Wii because at the time I used my PC to play DVDs, and my disc reader was breaking on my PC. So I bought a Wii on a Black Friday deal. This was years after the Wii had been launched. I think I spent like $50 on it. That's how cheap it was, how long it's been out on a Black Friday deal. And I bought it, I had the mindset like, I'm going to go buy a Wii because I haven't played any Nintendo products since Nintendo 64. I didn't really get into the GameCube. And I'm like, I'm going to go back and buy some of these, old games that I used to play growing up, for cheap prices. Because, you used to always go to GameStop or Funko Land or KB or whatever it was called. I don't remember at this timeline in my life. You'd see games in the bin, for like $2, $3, $5. Little did I know, they wanted $20 to buy Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And as soon as I seen that, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then I went
to the game that was released on these. It was originally released on Super Nintendo, right?
64.
64. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not paying $20 for a game that's 20 something years old. And then I went to GameStop and I looked in the bin, and I kid you not, all the Mario games are still $20 and $30 used. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, there's no way that these games
the original
values,
Apple, man.
Yeah, there's no way that these games values are still at this price. I'm talking about games that first launched on GameCube, like Super Mario Sunshine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, isn't it wild?
And to get back to what I originally was talking about, and I kind of veered off, the Wii didn't play DVDs. Yeah.
The only reason you bought it.
Yeah. So I'm over here thinking, $50 for a Wii, or I can go out and spend $30, $40 for a DVD player. I'm going to go ahead and buy a Wii. Little did I know, it don't play damn DVDs. So what did I do? I returned it. That was my Wii career. It lasted seriously 2 days.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think I know we weren't really talking about the Wii here, but I bought a Wii at a pawn shop for like $75. And it's probably like only the second time in my life I've ever been in a pawn shop too. So I don't know how the hell I ended up buying a Wii of all things, but we played mostly just the one game that came with it, like Wii Sports, whatever. But I remember playing. There was a Super Mario Paper or one. I don't know, one of the Super Marios that was released, one of the newer ones, Super Mario Brothers. And I mean, it was fun. I mean, you instead of holding it like you hold a Wii controller, you turn it sideways. You hold it like a normal controller, which was pretty cool. But yeah, like you say, I would consider Nintendo has always done that, where they are like what we classify as like the original Apple, right? Where they all their stuff seems to hold really tight in terms of their value. Like you just don't even buy anything. Hell, I think Pokemon, if you buy it on the, I have a Nintendo DS, and I think even the Pokemon games are like $10, and they came out on the fucking Game Boy Color
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago, whatever it was, you know?
It's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you come from Xbox and Sony, where you can go buy these like highly rated games and very good games still for $5-10.
Yeah, especially on some of these sales like that. I think that's what the marketplace did more than anything, right? Is the Xbox Live Marketplace is it really added the ability to buy games on sale. Like, I mean, now, I mean, they run sales 4 or 5 times a year, like major, huge sales. We're talking about where you can buy, like I bought Assassin's Creed. What was the last one I bought? What's the one before Valhalla?
Odyssey.
The one that's Odyssey. Yeah, I'm sorry. I bought Assassin's Creed Odyssey for like $8, you know, and it was like a year after it was released, so it wasn't like it was like super old. So it's like, yeah, some of the deals that they have is just ridiculous. And then, like you said, for whatever reason, and that maybe that's Nintendo protecting its assets, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you say it's expensive, and it is expensive, then I guess people will pay for it. You know, I mean, people buy Gucci belts, right? That work just like a normal belt from Walmart, but
Yeah, it just uses
it doesn't say Gucci, right? Yeah, you know, they paid $3, $4, $5, $6, $7,000 on a fucking belt. You know, not me. You know, that's not something I'm gonna do.
If it holds my britches up, I'm wearing it.
That's right. That's right. One thing I want to talk about accessories is the chat pad or the type pad, whatever they called it. I never owned it, but it was one of those things on my list of things that I really wanted because it made sending messages a lot easier. I know they added in voice messages after that, but trying to respond to somebody or trying to tell somebody something is very difficult when you're trying to text between matches or something like that.
Yeah,
This is
not in
obviously
today's time.
right around headset time. Yeah, it's a lot different now. You can just use the app now, so it's amazing kind of how far we've come. I don't remember the last time I've sent a message on Xbox that I didn't send from my phone. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just amazing. What else we got to talk about? I guess DLCs. We can complain about DLCs, and then we'll go into some of the other issues that happened with the original 360. Obviously, we've talked about the marketplace a bunch, the Xbox Live service and Xbox Live Marketplace. Obviously, this time period, Dreamcast was the first one to offer DLC in any way, shape, or form because it came with online. It was the first console basically to add or have available any sort of online support. The original Xbox had some, but not much. But once the 360 came, I mean, it's just crazy. You know, even if it was only like you said, $1 to $5, you get to pick and choose what you want. Now, because of this right here, and them setting this up, I mean, now you games are releasing for $60 and selling yearly passes like Destiny 2 does for $40 just to get access to content.
Yeah,
It's
it's like I told you yesterday in a text that said we pay $60 for a beta and then charge us $40 for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about it. Like I definitely prefer this time period in terms of video gaming because you know you get to experience the game as the game was intended to be experienced, and then you can just add on, and that was kind of the goal, I guess, of the DLC, a little bit of extra content that wasn't very long. I mean, you only paid $5. I guess the expectation was you paid $5 and you got, you know, a couple hours worth of gameplay, and now, especially with Destiny 2, like they'll add in a damn DLC, and you've got 3 hours of content, and you paid $20 for it. So I don't know where the
$40 for it.
Well, I'm talking about the mini DLCs, like the mini ones, not the yearly. The yearly one, it's I agree that one's got, but it has a little bit more content. But the mini ones, like for example, what the Dark Below had 3 missions, 2 story missions, 3 story missions, and a raid. Like that's basically Dark Below. Now, but it had a raid at least. But I'm just saying, like we paid $10, I think it was, for Dark Below. or
Yeah.
you bought the bulk with all the DLCs involved. But I think it was like $10 for each DLC.
And see, that's why I like Xbox too, because Xbox just released the newest Destiny 2 expansion, whatever it's called.
Yep.
Beyond Light.
Yeah, Beyond Light. Yeah.
They released it on Game Pass on consoles. So I got to play it for free. And I'm really glad that I did because, you know, I run through the story and I don't raid anymore because I don't play with, you know, that many people. And I'm glad that I got to play it for free because I would have not spent money on that.
Yeah. This is not really related to what we're talking about. I guess it is a little bit. You heard about the Xbox Live was going to raise. They were going to raise the prices on the Xbox Live. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
And then that, you know, the outrage, they decided not to. Even with their increase in price, if they did that, it was still the best value you could afford for video gaming. I'm glad they're not raising the price. I'd much rather pay this, you know, whatever it is, because I don't know if there's. They said they re-added the yearly, but I know they had taken that away. Mine just re-upped a couple months ago, so I didn't have any issues with the yearly because mine was on auto draft or whatever.
Yeah.
Or auto pull, whatever. But yeah, I mean, even if you just do it monthly, how much is Ultimate?
I don't know the pricing anymore. I just pay it.
Let's see if we can look that up real quick.
While you're looking that up, the thing too with Xbox Live, it's a two-sided argument. Like if you look at it from a consumer standpoint and then you look at it from a business standpoint. As a consumer standpoint, no, I don't want to pay more for a feature I've been using for years. But from a business standpoint, Xbox Live has been $50 a year since it released in this current time period that we're talking
60,
about.
Yeah, 60.
Yeah, 60, sorry. But it's been that same price for what, 13 years now?
Well, yeah, you were right. It was originally 50, and then they bumped it once like Netflix and everything got added from 50 to 60. So, but that we're talking at least 10 or 12 years, like you're saying. It's been about 15 years where it's $50 a month. The subscription base started about 15 years ago. But yeah, at least 10 years ago, it's been $60. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about the cost of inflation, you know what I mean? Just with the price of the console, you know, you said earlier at the beginning, it was like $700 for the PlayStation 3.
Yep.
And you don't sit here and think about this Xbox Live service that you're paying for that you've been spending $60 on for the past 10 years. And now when they want to up their price, you want to throw a hissy fit. Like I said, as a consumer, I get it because you don't want to spend more money. But as a business, I mean, you know what I mean? It makes sense to do so.
Yeah, because to be honest with you, you start a price point, but I thought that the thing that I think they did wrong originally was they basically gave the Game Pass, they added it into the original Gold, right? I mean, it was kind of added right with Gold, or no?
To my knowledge, I think their first marketing was they had Xbox Live, you just pay for Gold, you know, $60 a year. Then they added, you could pay for Xbox Live and Game Pass at, I think it was like $15 per month.
Yeah, and then they just bundled it together.
Yeah, and then
now
now
the same price.
Yeah, and then now they've got all this like Game Pass Ultimate, which includes PC and that kind of stuff. Which once again, for its value, is great because, you know, if you are one of these people, because, you know, PC parts this past year, it's been hard to get a hold of PC parts because everybody's, you know, on quarantine and people are starting to build PCs and switching, especially with all games now kind of heading towards the cross-gen, you know, the cross-play. A lot of people are starting to build PCs and go that route. And for Xbox to jump on this opportunity, you know, is great. It's still worth all the money because you get a lot of games on Game Pass to just play on your PC. Like this PC that you just spent, say, $1,000 on for a mid-tier gaming PC. Well, now you don't have to go out and spend, you know, $40, $50, $60 on games. You can just use your Xbox, which if you come from an Xbox console, you don't have to pay anything. It's already included. You may have to pay like $10 more to add the PC part of it, but it just depends on what you already had.
Yeah, so I got the pricing here, and again, we're not sponsored by Xbox or anything. It's just we're just talking about them because it's what we're talking about. So the way it works is for the console is $10 a month, but that includes gold. It doesn't say it includes gold, but I thought it did anyway. $10 a month for the console, $10 a month for PC if you do them separately, or you get the ultimate, which is $15.99 or $14.99 a month, and then you get gold as well on the ultimate, I guess, and you have access to over 100 quality games on both PC, Android, mobile devices, and console. Newly added games all time. Xbox Studio releases same day. Extra deals and discounts, free perks, including in-game content and partner offers. And you get to play games on mobile game. And play games on your mobile phone and tablet from the cloud, so you can actually access the games that you're already playing on, say, Xbox or the PC on your mobile device. So just if you break it down, what is that? Is that for the year?
Yeah,
$180. So
Yeah.
that's 3 video games.
for a year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you bought 3 video games, you total about $180. Instead, you have access to games. Now, granted, there may not be 100 games that you want to play on there today, but I mean, they just added a game that I just started playing was Torchlight 3. I enjoyed the original Torchlight. I never played Torchlight 2 because it wasn't free, or it was like $20. I'm not paying $20 for a game. At least in my mind, the original Torchlight was like a 10-hour game, if that. So I didn't want to play pay for it, but
it's not like a AAA title that has all this promotion behind it.
right. And it was, I just said, hell, let's give it a shot. And the cool thing, like I guess the best part is, and one of the things that they do that I think is amazing is it gives you the ability to play these games. Okay. And then if you want to continue, if you just, let's say you really like it, or you just don't have time and it's going to be removed, it lets you know, hey, this is going to be removed soon. And then they give you a discount on the game. Not that you necessarily have to buy it, but they give you a discount on purchasing the game. And that is wonderful for someone who, like me, who just doesn't have as much time as I used to play video games, that if there's a title that I got into but is going to be removed, and to the best of my knowledge, they don't remove any Xbox game studios, so you don't have to worry about any of Microsoft titles being removed for the most part, I don't think.
Yep.
So
Like all the
this is a
gears are
whole
on there.
nother little rabbit hole we went down, but and they also added EA Play, so all the EA games are on there as well. And EA by itself is $25 a year. So you just saved yourself gold, which is $60 a year, EA, which is $25 a year, and instead you pay $180 a year. So that's damn near the entire total. 60 and 25, that's $85. So you're paying, instead of 180, you're basically, let's just say $100 for access to over 100 games. That's $1 a game. So it's definitely a pretty cool little thing that they implemented. I believe, to be honest with you, that it's going to change, or it's going to continue to put a lot of pressure on Sony to get their shit together. And not only that, we still have access to 4 free titles a month, right?
Yeah.
So it's just hard to believe that the console quote unquote war is still as big as it is. It doesn't seem like much of a war in my mind.
Well, I mean, console per console, obviously Sony always wins that. But as far as when you break off the actual console itself, and you start talking about like controllers and games and services and that kind of stuff, to me, Xbox has always had the better controller. I don't like the PlayStation controller. Services, obviously, Xbox is walking all over PlayStation. And then as far as the games department, that's where we're split. Most people like PlayStation's exclusive games, but this leads me back to what I said a couple minutes ago. Microsoft is getting to a point where they don't care about exclusives anymore. I mean, as you
Not
can
at
tell,
all.
every time Microsoft Studios comes out with a game, it's available to buy on Xbox, Windows 10, the xCloud stuff, or mobile. A lot of them release it on PlayStation as well, and Switch. I mean, they don't care. I mean, I think their viewpoint is they're realizing that exclusives, they don't make money, because that used to be the way it was. All these gaming companies, they take a hit on their consoles. Like, they don't make hardly any money off the console. They make money off their games.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the thing that, like you said, Microsoft did a great job. Is they still have some exclusive titles. Don't get me wrong, I don't know that Halo is released on anything, or
Well, I mean, it's on PC
Neither.
now.
well, yeah, I guess it's not exclusive to Xbox, but it's yeah, I get what you're saying. So yeah, they're on PC. So you have your that's where they've crossed the genre. They're not going to move into Sony, but that's where they've crossed it. Where yeah, I guess you didn't have access to it on PC beforehand. And then with them buying up, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher it. I didn't want to say it, but I still brought it up. Bethesda, with them buying that, that really puts the Elder Scrolls in a weird spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Considering they own that game franchise now, and people are complaining that well maybe now I won't be able to access it on I guess it was released on PlayStation. Again, I never really played the game, so I don't know, but I would imagine, right?
I think it was.
Skyrim was on PlayStation, so I think in terms of a lot of things, it has the opportunity to put a lot of different things in there.
Yeah, it's
so it did come on
multi-platform
PlayStation, so. And that's going to probably limit that potential. I think that they're going to stick with it, just the PC aspect and the Xbox. And I think they're going to say, hey, if you want to buy a PlayStation, more power to you. But the only reason people are buying PlayStation is for the exclusive titles. People still play Madden and stuff like that. But I mean, we're not talking about, I mean, I guess they play Destiny, but they don't have cross servers. Rocket League, that's an Xbox One title, but that's a fun game that I know that does play between all the consoles and stuff. It does have crossplay. So there's just a lot of cool stuff that's coming, man. I think that's a huge deal, right? Crossplay.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that in the 360 time?
Oh, God. Yeah. But like I said earlier, I think Xbox's biggest downfall is the games that they do have that are exclusive are all sequels. And that's why PlayStation smacks all over the gaming department as far as that aspect goes, because PlayStation is actually implementing more fresh and unique, AAA title games, whereas Xbox is just kind of milking out, the 8th Halo and the 7th Gears.
Well, I think part of it is when I was a kid, you never really heard anything, and even now, I guess when a kid, probably not the right word. When I was a teenager, you really didn't hear a lot. Gears when it first came out and Halo when it first came out, you didn't really hear a lot about exclusive titles, though. Those were like basically it. So I don't think that exclusivity is really a big deal in terms of why I play in an Xbox, right? I don't really care. I played an Xbox because it offered a lot of things that I needed at a price point I wanted to pay. And that was what was important to me personally. I get some people where they want to be a quote unquote gaming purist or whatever, where they say, oh, well, this matters more than this, and I want the exclusive titles. I want to play God of War. I want to play all the other exclusive titles. I can't remember off the top of my head because I don't play PlayStation. But I think that, like you said, the cross-platform, I think that's going to be the big deal when they can figure out how to keep PC and Xbox on the same page. It gets weird when you get into competitiveness because it's a lot easier to click a mouse and to zero in on somebody, as you've realized, right? When you're trying to play a competitive multiplayer or a competitive shooter than it is on the Xbox, right?
Well, see, it's funny because the game that I play the most right now is called Smite, and that's a PC MOBA, but it's also a console MOBA, and they allow crossplay between Xbox, PC, Switch, and I think just recently they added in PlayStation, because Sony finally got their heads out of their asses and allowed it to happen. But when you're in the settings of that game, there's a setting down there that says crossplay, and if you're on a console, you don't want to play with PC people, you can select it to console only, and that still allows you to play between Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. You just won't get any PC people in there, which is great, because like you had mentioned that competitive aspect, I would not want to be playing Call of Duty with someone on PC and I'm on Xbox. Right. It's just not fair. But it's still nice to have that there, because say if I'm on PC and you're on Xbox and we want to run through the campaign together, we could still have that option.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that as a whole, now granted, like I said, I don't know if you could ever get it to where you can make them close, because at the end of the day, a PC is just a little bit more reactive. It's just a little bit more smoother. And you have the ability to change your, if you're willing to pay for it, you can have the best quality today anyway. Maybe not tomorrow, but today you can have the best overall PC you could possibly afford. Whereas when you buy an Xbox, it is what it is. There isn't. I mean, I guess you can upgrade it, but it is what it is.
I mean, you're locked in for the next 5 or 6 years or whenever they make another console. PC, you're kind of waiting 6 months for tech to advance.
Right. And obviously, if you're able to run at a higher frame rate, if you're able to run at a smoother overall presentation, you're able to see everything a little bit clearer. And hell, these people, they run like 4 or 5 monitors where they can see around, not necessarily around corners, but can see what's coming in their periphery, can see it better. I've watched a guy he was playing Counter-Strike, and he had the monitors. He had 3 or 4 monitors set up, and he can see kind of like his periphery can catch the corners better than say me, who's looking at one screen, and I can't necessarily always catch the corners. And I'm like, my God, obviously PC has a huge advantage over a console player, but like you said, the ability to do it if you like is really what's important. Just having the option is almost more important than the option itself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now we have to unfortunately get into the bad stuff, right? Obviously, all good things have bad things.
There was no bad stuff. What are you talking about?
Well, you know what? I definitely didn't have any bad. I had one bad thing happen.
I had 3 bad things happen.
Yeah, I only. To be honest with you, the fact that mine lasted as long as it did, I am totally okay with that. I bought mine, and it was probably the 2005 or 2006, and it made it till probably 2010. So I guess I didn't get quite as much as I got out of the Xbox One, I guess. But yeah, it lasted quite a while. Obviously, the biggest and biggest issue overall was a Red Ring of Death, right? You've had some experience with that, right, bud?
Yeah, I had 2 consoles die to that.
So, I was lucky. I didn't have any Red Ring of Death issues, but there were some major issues. So, it was a failure rate between 30 and 33%, which is an astronomical number.
That is wild.
When you think about total consoles sold. So if you sold 100 consoles, that's anywhere between 30 to 33 of those consoles are going to break on you.
Yeah.
How absolutely wild is that?
Let's see.
How many?
84, and then we'll divide or multiply by. That is
27. That's an insane number.
27,720,000 consoles.
Yeah, that is. I mean, they fixed it and probably sold more towards the end, but yeah, I mean that's just a good number to run with. 27 million potential consoles had issues from this. That is absolutely insane. The speculation was based on cheap soldering, I guess, on the graphic chips, which seems absolutely ridiculous too, right? That's what would cause all these issues, right?
Something that costs a couple cents worth to use, and that's what bogarted the whole system.
Yeah. It's so wild. It's just amazing how many people and how pissed off people were. Like literally, that probably changed the entire. No, it didn't matter how much better overall in our minds the 360 was. That fucked Microsoft for a long time, right? People were afraid to buy a new console, a new Xbox console anyway.
You remember the towel trick?
No, I never had the issue, so I never had to try to work around any of them. So if you got any tricks that you remember, go for it.
So the towel trick was once your console got the red ring, you take a normal towel and you wrap it up tightly, the console in the towel, and you purposely overheat the console. And for whatever reason, that got it working again. And then for me,
so weird.
Yeah, you wouldn't think to purposely overheat a console would fix it, right? It just kind of seems counterproductive. Right. But the way it worked for me is like I'd do the towel trick and it would last for like a week. And then I'd do it again. The red ring would come back, obviously. I'd do it again and it lasts for another week. And then the red ring would come back. And then eventually it got to a point where the towel trick just did not work anymore. So I don't know if it was because of that cheap solder that they were using. Maybe when you wrapped the towel up, it heated up the solder to where it could kind of, if you wrapped it up in a towel, the heat that the Xbox puts out, it's not enough to actually melt the solder. Because, I mean, you got to have like really high temperature to do that. But it would be enough to make the solder soft. So maybe it made it just malleable enough to cover, contact points that were, not soldered correctly. I mean, I don't know the exact technical reasoning of why they overheated, but you could wrap it up in a towel and overheat it and get some more use out of it. And I went through that with 2 consoles. And my other console actually had a disc read error. I had to take it out of the case and literally position the laser on the disc to get it to read.
Yeah, so I had the same issue. That was my only issue ever. I remember that specifically trying to fix it myself. Because there was a lot of videos out and a lot of things out and speculation, and YouTube was just kind of becoming a big thing. And there's a lot of websites and places that you could go to buy tools that you needed. Like it was not easy to take apart the particular 360. They make this stuff difficult on purpose, right? They don't want you taking this stuff apart.
That little key you needed for the back of the console that had I don't know, was it like 15 pins or something in it?
Yeah, it was really weird. So I just remember I bought the first thing that I ever tried to do is I tried to fix my iPod, which did not work. I broke that motherfucker into a bazillion pieces. I threw it against the wall because I couldn't get it open. Even with the tools they sent me, I couldn't get the motherfucker open. And then I threw it, and then I finally got it open, and then you had to replace the I don't remember what I had to replace, but I bought the little tab or whatever, and I guess I didn't get it closed tight enough, and then it swelled and it exploded. So needless to say, I never messed with Apple products again. That was the last time I ever tried to take any of them apart. So that was unsuccessful, but I figured the Xbox couldn't be quite as difficult. So I did get it apart. I did clean it out. I did do things that was kind of like troubleshooting, but you had to flash the new drive and all this shit. So I ended up just say F it and just bought a new one. I convinced my dad, and then I goofed off with the old one and just, I tinkered. I would play with it, see if I could figure out this is wrong, what can I do to fix this, yada, yada, that sort of stuff. But yeah, I very quickly realized that I'm not capable of fixing this, and I just bought a new one.
Yeah, see, mine was like a Frankenstein of a console when I was done with it, because I used a screwdriver, like a little tiny flathead screwdriver, to push in all those pins in the back, and I just kind of worked my way from one pin to the other. The way that mine is my disc tray, once it got reading, it was fine. But when you hit the eject button, put a disc in, and then closed it, it wouldn't spin.
Right.
So for whatever reason, when I opened my console, I could put the game in the disc, but the thing is, there's this little circular magnetic thing that goes right in the middle of the CD to keep the CD. What it does,
in place.
Yeah, when you close it, it lifts the CD up like maybe a 1/16 of an inch, so it can free spin. And you had to have that magnet on the center to keep the CD balanced as well. So it was always like a race against time for me to, hit the eject button, put the game in there, and then hit the eject button, wait for it to close, and then throw that little magnet on top real fast. Because
you realize how ridiculous we sound, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing, man. It's I spent $300-400 on this thing. I'm gonna get my use out of it before I shit can it and go spend another $300-400 out of it. I mean, I'm
totally with you. It's just so funny.
Yeah, here's my thought process. It's already broke. What am I gonna do? Break it more, or I could potentially fix it?
Yeah, it's just so funny to think about, like, just these little, like, we would just read on the internet, like, this will fix it, and you're like, hell yeah, that's how I'm gonna fix it. Let me put a magnet there. I'll pick that some bitch up by myself. You know, I'll spin it by hand if I have to.
I mean, it's like wrapping, it's like wrapping the console up in towels. I mean, common sense tells you that anything that's electronic generates heat. Yep. And heat is the enemy of electronics, heat and dust. Yep. So common sense tells you that you need to put electronics in well-ventilated areas. Somehow wrapping the console up tightly in a towel doesn't seem like it's good for it. But hey, if over half of the internet says this worked for them, guess what? I'm going to do it too. Because I'm not going to just go out here and go spend another $300 without at least attempting to fix my already broken machine.
Well, yeah, that's it, right? It's no different than throwing it against the wall. It's already broke, so why not have fun, or at least attempt to make it at least usable for a little while longer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it was amazing that they had these major issues and you couldn't get They did extend the warranty, right, for the Red Ring of Death to like
Yeah.
4 years or something. They didn't really ever mention the disc tray error. They just kind of said that, whatever. They didn't do anything to help you on that one, but I can recall anyway. Those are two major issues that happened with it that you don't really hear about Sony. Like I'm not here to say that they made obviously the specs were better, but I don't know if the way they put it together was so much better. It was just bad luck, I guess. On the 360's part, they were doing their best to try to get that console to not be successful. The gods or whatever, but it's just crazy to think about that this stuff happened in the first place, right?
I mean, it's like you said earlier. It's very hard to bounce back from something of this magnitude. You got your competitor over here that's making a console that's outselling you, and it works. And then you're the competition that you've got this system you think is the bee's knees, and it's over here not reading games, it's overheating or not displaying games. So it's like, how do you bounce back from that?
Yeah, I mean, other gaming companies, console companies went out of business for less, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
like
basically
Sega.
yeah, they basically went out of business not because they didn't make a good console. I mean, their consoles. Dreamcast was a great console. That wasn't the reason it went out of business. It went out of business because it just couldn't compete with the other ones. They didn't even have major. I mean, I never deep dove into like whether it had like major hardware issues or anything to that effect. But to the best of my knowledge, people still classify it as one of the best consoles ever made. And that was the last one they made because they couldn't afford to make another one. You had a lot of other consoles like Philips and I think Casio even jumped into some of these. Like a lot of these electronic companies gave consoles a shot, and they just said, "The hell with it. I'll just leave that for Nintendo." It was, Nintendo at the time, and then eventually Sony, because them and Nintendo couldn't agree on making a console together. So it's just kind of funny how things just fall or work out, right? But my big thing was, it's just that I don't know had Microsoft not had their major money already invested into Windows and that sort of stuff, and had the ability that even if Xbox was a major failure, if Bill Gates said, "I'm going to make this regardless, I don't give a shit what happens," and which is probably what happened. They had enough money behind them. It still is to this day, right? Because they don't need to make it. They really don't. I'm assuming that's the only reason they kept going. But yeah, they definitely, the 360 introduced a lot of things that, even with its issues, that everybody else had to catch up on.
I mean, you can take it twofold and say Sony don't need it either, because Sony makes a wide vast of appliances. Consumer electronics. They don't make just video game consoles. They even make music instruments and stuff like that. Microsoft, they make the operating system that's used on millions of business PCs around the world. They don't need video game consoles to keep them afloat, just like Sony don't need the PlayStation to keep them afloat. But to get back to your story, with these consoles having such a bad failure rate, it was a matter of they were trying to do what they could to fix the problem, but they didn't really know what the problem was to begin with. The best thing that they could do was extend that warranty.
Well, these weren't happening like on day one consoles either. So it's like you had to have hours of testing, and even then you know what I'm saying? I think the issue was they couldn't replicate it, right? Like 2 years of, and I'm not saying that they didn't happen on day one, but I'm just saying it usually was because of 2 years of playing before there was ever an issue, right? This didn't happen. It was released in 2005. It's not like the Red Ring of Death popped up 2006. I don't think anyway.
Yeah, and like you said, it's hard to replicate this error that so many people are getting. At what point as a business do you chalk it up to user abuse? You know what I mean?
Right. And that's probably what they were at least thinking of at first, right?
I would assume so. Like they're probably thinking that people are just shoving these consoles in tiny little cabinets with no airspace and they're just overheating. Or they're violent with their consoles and they slam them down on the ground. Or are they being vertical when they're being played? Or are they being horizontal when they played? There's so many unknown variables that Microsoft doesn't know about. And like you said, if you can't replicate the problem, how do you know how to fix it?
Yeah, so I pulled up a quick little website, and these issues didn't start until 2008. So most of these consoles were anywhere between 2 to 3 years old. And what's crazy is people began to return Xboxes, and this cost Microsoft more than $1 billion in terms of overall sales, which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. Apparently, there were a couple other issues with the Xbox 360S with the power block. I didn't really have that issue. Yeah, it's amazing to think. I guess you don't really think about it because I guess when things are going good, you don't ever look this stuff up, right? Like I have had zero issues with my Xbox One. It's the same one I bought in like 2012 or 13, whatever year I bought it. I haven't had another issue since. So I'm sure there's issues with Xbox Ones, but I've never had them, so I don't really know.
Yeah, Paul is on his third Xbox.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, apparently it's got something to do with every time he turns the console on, it says there's time for an update. And it's like literally it'll work for a couple days and then it always says it's time for an update. And it's got nothing to do with the you know how when you on Xbox Live when you turn your console on and they say system update available and you ignore it for so long and then it forces you to update it. It wasn't anything like that. Like he literally had to put a Xbox update onto a flash drive to stick in the side of his console because he couldn't download it through the internet for whatever reason. Because it was the current version would just brick the console.
Wow, amazing. I was looking up a couple any other issues that potentially happened to 360 that maybe we didn't talk about. Apparently, there was a major issue with disk scratches. I don't know that. I didn't really have an issue there. There was an issue with an update that did the same thing. It would brick the console, rendering them 100% useless in November.
I'm about willing to bet, though, that those disk scratches were from idiots picking up the console while it was on, like reading the game.
Yeah. Apparently, there was that was the longest part I didn't read, but yeah, some major issue.
And once again, that's common sense. You know, if there's a
it's usually, I would imagine,
if there's a disc spinning inside of a machine that's stationary, don't move it while it's rotating at I don't know how many RPMs these things spin at.
Yeah, they're saying there's oh my gosh, circumferential scratches found on discs using the 360. Basically, what's happening is it's causing circles, scratches on the outside near the end of the rim of the CD. I don't know exactly what the issue is there.
Did it say that the laser was too high or anything like that?
Well, it's saying that, let me see. It's basically saying that tilting or moving the consoles with these drives when operating with a disc inside can potentially cause damage to the disc, rendering the disc unplayable as a result, which we both know that could happen. I mean, come on. I don't understand what the issue there is. Don't pick the shit up. Leave it alone,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
See, now if it was like the laser was just setting up too high and literally just scratching the disc, I could understand that.
So apparently there was some situation where there was a decreasing the disc rotation would cause games to take excess amount of times to load from the disc, and they could have added a bumper to the disc tray, which would have cost about 25 cents per console, and they would have delayed the release and decided not to do that. And that was part of the problem, I guess, was they didn't want to make sure that it would work properly. And then they eventually, I guess, did a thing where they offered a disc replacement program where they offered to, I guess they would sell them a new copy of the disc that was scratched by the Xbox 360 and at the cost of $20 a piece, which I think is absolutely ridiculous that was what they offered.
Yeah.
Considering it was their problem, not ours, but yeah.
Yeah, you got to love corporations, how they fix things, right?
Yeah. We're going to sell you a $50 game at $20. It's better, I promise.
Yeah. We know it's our fault that it's messed up, but this is the best we can do.
Yeah, it's just goodness. You just wonder what they were thinking. I don't know. Like you say, it's kind of amazing that part of it is amazing that Microsoft's still in the console business, because especially with the 360, where me and you have such fond memories of the 360 and just like running maps on Call of Duty. Me, you, Paul, and Tyler, and all of them just running around acting like fools, killing people, squashing people in certain instances. And then there was just all these hardware issues and these just situations where it's like, you wonder how they decided to make the Xbox One, right?
Yeah. That was probably in the back of their mind. And truth be told, maybe that's why when the Xbox One came out, they marketed it more towards the all-in-one console, media entertainment device. Maybe they kind of wanted to stray away from, this is strictly a device for playing video games because of technical problems with the 360. Maybe they were trying to branch out into a different audience, and kind of veer away from Sony a little bit. I don't know.
I do agree that strategy has worked, right? Like you said, you use basically your Xbox more for an entertainment hub and less for a video game hub these days. I'll be honest. I mean, I got a Fire Stick, and so I don't really use the Xbox much for my hub anymore. But I was the same way for a long. That's mostly because my Xbox is so freaking old, and it takes a while for it to load and get into stuff and whatever. So it's just easy for me to use the daggone Fire Stick. But I do agree that had things like Fire Stick or the Roku or some of these other programs not be introduced, I would still be using my Xbox as my main hub. All the new updates to the user interface and all that, easier for me to just not even bother. But it's definitely a situation where they have improved drastically in that realm too, because they do offer basically everything. They don't try to hide nothing. I guess that's one of the things I definitely love about Microsoft in general, like we were mentioning, where they offer basically just say, hey, consume my products. I don't really care. If you want to consume it on this or consume it on that, I don't really care. Just consume them. Just enjoy them. Whereas like Amazon, the Fire Sticks, they don't get along with X or they don't get along with Y, and so they don't have this app or they don't have that app, or Roku doesn't have this app. It's like, what the hell is the issue here? We're going back to like when the cable televisions, when they started adding in premium channels, right? That's basically what we're talking about here. Well, no, I don't want you to pay $3 for my ESPN. I want you to pay $7 for ESPN. So you guys need to figure out how you can keep your cable package at $100, but you're paying me $7. Like that's basically what we're at now, where all these streaming services are coming out, and you're trying to find a way to afford all these streaming services, which are more expensive than just regular TV at this point. But Xbox did a great job of making a hub for all those opportunities for all these different streaming services to even be a thing in the first place, right?
Yeah, because like in my case, I'm one of those people that even in the time of alluc.org, where you could stream free movies, and the Fire Stick nowadays, and Kodi.
I do not use the jailbroken Fire Stick. I just want to clarify that. Mine's just a regular old Fire Stick. I don't jailbreak. Mine's not jailbroken. Mine's just funny story before you continue. I downloaded Warcraft 3 illegally, right? And I didn't even get to play a match. And I got a letter in the mail from Verizon Wireless, or Verizon. I had their Fios or whatever it's called. Or no, it was Comcast. I'm sorry. And Comcast sent me a letter in the mail telling me I must delete it or they will pursue me for legal charges. And I said, fuck this. I deleted that. And I've never legally downloaded anything since. So I do not mess with it. So that worked on me, man. So I got a regular Fire Stick.
Scared you straight on that one.
It sure did. It sure did.
But what I was going to say, though, is like all those things where you could go and get free TV shows and free movies. I'm one of these people. There was so much hassle in doing that, because say if you wanted to watch a TV, say you wanted to watch like American Chopper, right? You got season 1 and you got like, say, 15 episodes. On those websites where you stream them for free, sometimes you may not be able to watch an episode because, it's all provided by different hosts, and not all the hosts are good.
Yep.
So rather than going through that road of bullshit, I'll pay the $3 for the episode. Okay? I mean, what's $3 at this point in my life? But back to my original point is I have over thousands of dollars in movies and TV shows through Xbox Live Marketplace. Back in the day, it was kind of if you go to PlayStation, you're going to lose all these movies, because it's through Xbox Live Marketplace. But now, they partner with like Movies Anywhere. So all these movies that I've paid money for, I don't have to watch them on my Xbox. I can do it through another app. I guess my whole point to this being made was like with the hub and the entertainment thing was Xbox was just the console that I stuck with from 360, and then I bought a One. And even if I were to buy a PlayStation, it would just be solely for a gaming console. I would buy it to play those exclusive games, and then I'd be done with it. I mean, I actually bought a PlayStation 4. Yeah. Yeah, I bought a PlayStation 4 and I played all the Uncharted games. I played the God of War games, and then I sold it and I was done with it.
Yeah, that would be the only reason I would buy it. I tried to use. I just feel like their interface is just not good, or
It's
it's just
old.
different. Yeah, it's different. One of the things that I've always kind of been like frustrated, but like at the same time, like, we don't like change. No one does, right? So when Xbox updates their user interface, you get used to it being one way or being another way or whatever the case may be, and then you get so frustrated when they change it. But most of the time, they've been for the better.
My issue
but-
with that is I'm getting tired of updates every couple weeks. It's not that I don't like the change. Like if you want to give me an interface change, every 6 months or every year or whatever, I'm okay with that. But I'm getting sick of these system updates every 2 to 3 weeks.
I think part of, I agree. And I think part of it is we just don't, well, you're still using a console quite a bit, but I don't use my console enough that it does seem like every time I try to use it, I have an update. But that seems to be the case for everything. Unfortunately, as we continue to grow, I think that it's going to get worse and worse just because of security issues and things like that they have to try to patch, because you're trying to stay ahead of all these other people who just don't want to do, work for anything that they have. So it kind of is what it is.
Yeah, it's still annoying though.
That I can agree on. So next week, unless you got anything else, you want to talk about, bud?
Nah, I'm good. Go on with it.
All right. So next week, we're going to talk about Xbox One and just the growth through Xbox One into PC gaming and the adding. We've talked about that a little bit today, but that's what next week's episode is mostly going to be about, just the growth of Xbox and then sort of how PC gamers have taken over once again, and they sort of transitioned, a lot of them have transitioned from Xbox to PCs, at least in one part of, for me, after the Xbox One, my gaming career sort of went downhill. Just sort of talks about sort of the decline of video games for myself, even for Bud. Like we just don't play video games nearly as much as we did. And we'll talk a little bit about the growth of mobile games, at least for me specifically, not necessarily Bud. Bud did play some, but I think that that's the thing where we're going in like these vast different directions. We're going in where consoles are like we'll consider consoles like the main road, right? And then mobile games is going off in its own little road, and then PC games is going off its own little road, and they're all sort of, I know PC kind of started this, but they're kind of veering off in these other directions. I guess the ends are growing greater than the middle, right? So I think that we'll just kind of talk about that sort of stuff and just kind of where we are today in gaming, because that's really what matters, right? We've kind of discussed a lot of old school stuff and a lot of things up to this point, and next week's just going to be about today and how we're feeling and the directions we're going in video gaming. We'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. I'll see you next week. If you made it this far, we appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Chris and Bud Show. This has been our pleasure. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the Chris and Bud Show 1, at Deliberate88, and at BudB88. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.